Hello, and welcome to episode 189 of the Mo Money Podcast. I'm your host, Jess Morehouse. Welcome back to the show. And this show, I'm very excited for two reasons. First, repeat guest again. I have my pal, Barry Choi, on the show. He was on my show literally almost 3 years ago. He was guest number 7. He was my guest for episode number 7. This was back when he lived in my old apartment that I rented, and I actually got all my guests to come over, and we did it live, but I wasn't as tech savvy as I am now, and so while we were recording it, I just didn't do, it wasn't the best recording, so I felt totally bad. It's still a great episode to listen to. It's totally fine. I got Josh, my husband / engineer, to fix it. But anyways, I told Barry after that, I'm like, oh, we'll do another episode together and I'll make sure it's all good and all that stuff. And bam, it's like 3 years later. I'm like, shoot, I should have Barry back on the show. But also, I had been doing a couple meetups, just unofficial meetups. Like one I did in Vancouver when I was visiting family for Christmas time, and one when I was in Ottawa over the fall. And I asked, my new friends, podcast listeners that joined me for a little meetup, what they wanted to hear on the show. And one of the things they said they want to learn more about how to kind of optimize, rewards and points through credit cards. But for Canadians, because a lot of the information out there is for Americans, no offense, Americans, it's just, it's a different ball game in Canada. There's different rules, there's different credit cards, there's different point systems. And so, of course, I thought Barry needs to be on the show. He has the best resources on his website, moneywehave.com. And he's always on TV talking about this. So, I had to call my friend Barry to get him back on the show. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. Before we get to that interview, here's just a few words about this episode's sponsor. This episode of the Mo Money Podcast is supported by Sonnet Insurance. How much are you paying for home, auto, or tenant insurance? Better yet, do you know what's in your insurance policy? If you don't know, you're not alone. In Sonnet's recent survey, they discovered that 1 in 3 Canadians haven't read their home and auto insurance policies either, which is why Sonnet stands out from other insurance companies. They've rewritten all their policy documents so you can actually understand how you're being protected without the needless jargon. And if you have questions, they're on standby via live chat, email, or give their award-winning customer service team a call to speak to a real human. Sonnet's aim isn't just to protect its clients, but to make the whole insurance process easy. Don't believe me? Visit sonnet.ca to get a quote online in just 5 minutes. It's really that easy, and one of the reasons I switched over to Sonnet myself. Try it out yourself by visiting sonnet.ca. Once again, that's sonnet.ca. Thanks, Barry, for joining me on the show. I mean, it's only taken 3.5 years for you to come back.
I can't believe it's taken that long.
I know, and I promise I won't mess this up because, as you know, the first time you came over to my house when I actually had people come over to my home, and I forgot to hit the record button. My mic was not really on. So even though that was a great episode about DIY investing, and honestly, I feel like it was one of the first conversations I've had with someone about DIY investing because I was such a noob at that time. We needed another episode in the can, don't you think?
That's what we're doing now.
That's what we're doing now. And also, so that was 3.5 years ago, which is insane. And since then, a lot has changed. At that time, you were obviously still you were blogging, but you still worked full time. You worked in the news, and now you're full time money/travel expert, which is pretty cool.
It's crazy when you think about it, right?
It is kind of crazy. It is crazy. And honestly, I don't know. I think you know this. I think I've told you this. You are a big reason why I decided to really just kind of double down on this idea of me rebranding from Mo Money Mo Houses to me as a personal brand and just let's do this. Let's see if I can make this into a legit business. Because you're one of the first people to really you invited me to, there was this brand dinner, this one company had a dinner for influencers. And I didn't even know you could really make real money or influencers were really a group of people. And so when you invited me, I'm like, whoa, this is a whole new world. This is interesting. Let's maybe see what we can do here.
Yeah, and it's not about just being an influencer. It's just really more about selling yourself. So
Yeah.
yeah, you have a certain amount of influence, but more importantly, you have a lot of skills
Yeah.
that you don't even realize. I remember your old marketing days, what you did with the podcast, or even things that
Yeah.
relate back to like your university days in studying film. Um, and it's not
Yeah.
just you; it's so many people out there who listen. Like they forget that they have all these marketable skills because they might be
Yeah.
stuck doing the same job over and over again.
Yeah.
But when we really start to think about it, you can sell your skills. You can do other things. You just
Mhm.
got to know how to market yourself and talk to other like-minded individuals who can help support you in your dreams.
Absolutely. And that's something, it's a learned skill. Like, I feel like I used to have the mindset where I'm like, well, I'm not a salesman, even though I totally worked in sales. I mean, not like on the front lines exactly, but I worked in like advertising sales for like 4 years. I'm like, I don't know anything about sales, but it's a learned skill. And I think anyone could do that. And, I always have guests on the show talking about side hustles. And I mean, you and me are like, we were super into side hustling. And sometimes when I think about how much I worked and when I know how much you work on top of your day job, I'm like, I don't know how we did it, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And it can turn into
Well,
something beautiful.
it's kind of weird like that sometimes because we met like pretty early where we both had
Yeah.
full-time jobs and our side hustles, they weren't even side hustles back then. They
Hmm.
were more like, oh, we're doing this for fun. We just have
Yeah.
similar interests. And then, like you said, oh, we can develop things, and then we kind of grew together. So we got lucky in the sense that we kind of met at the same time where our side hustles were growing. And
Hmm.
even though we had similar things, we were also doing different things, which is again a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
And
and we
more
could help
importantly,
each other. And it was nice to have
yeah,
you and I mean, we were still friends, obviously. It's nice to have someone to talk to about this weird world that's so new, like this online entrepreneur in the finance space. And what's interesting too, like you mentioned, we're kind of doing different things. We have kind of a little bit of different audiences and different expertises. Your expertise is obviously like you've got that travel thing, which we're going to talk a bit about because I know lots of my listeners want to know how to just all the things that we need to know in terms of like traveling and saving money. But also for me, you're that guy that I talk to. I'm like, hey, what's the best credit card around, or how to optimize credit card rewards? Because you always seem to be on top of that stuff. And when I was actually recently, I did a couple kind of mini meetups with some of my followers in Ottawa and Vancouver. One of the things that they want to know is they want more information about how to optimize their credit card rewards, because a lot of the information out there is for the States. Like I see all the time, all these Americans, they're like, I got this free amazing trip on points. I'm like, I've never been able to save up enough points to buy anything. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong. I probably am, but I don't even know where to start with that. And it seems like a lot of work, so I don't even try. So let's start there. Let's start with the credit card reward program optimization. How the hell do you get started with that? Is it actually that much? Is it a lot of effort? Like, is it? Let's be real.
um, it's kind of weird, right? So it's not a lot of effort, but it is at the same time.
Hmm.
In the sense that to really maximize your points. So let's just talk about the US a little bit first and
Yeah.
why people see those. There's obviously more people in the US. I think they have 10 times
Yeah.
the population of Canada. There's more
Mhm.
banks, there's more airlines, there's more everything, right? But as a result, that means they can make better offers
Yeah.
because there's more competition. They got to have a generous offer or you're not going to sign up.
Mhm.
So they might have I'm making this up, an offer of 100,000 points, but in Canada, it might be half of that.
I see.
There's just less competition. So it's really easy to get these rewards in the US. Okay. Now, to flip things to Canada, is it easy? It depends on how you look at it, right? So anyone can sign up for a credit card, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But the really good credit cards usually have a high income requirement, like $60,000, $80,000, right?
Mhm.
And those sign up bonuses usually have a bare minimum. To me, it's like if the sign up bonus is worth at least $250, it's probably worth signing up for, right?
Okay.
And of course, the problem with these sign up bonuses is you usually need to have to spend a minimal amount to get that bonus. That could be $1,000, $1,500, $3,000. One really generous bonus is actually a $7,000 spend. And for most normal people, it's like, I would never spend that much money in 3 months, blah, 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 right?
No.
Which may be true, but a lot of times, like, I spend like, $1,500 a month on my credit card because I charge everything to my credit card. And it's actually not that hard when you think about it. But at the same time, I totally understand that credit cards can be a trap.
Yeah, because you wouldn't believe how many people I talk to, and the reason that they're in credit card debt is they're like, "Well, I use my credit card because of points," and I know that's just an excuse. I'm like, "And how many points do you have, and what have you used them for?" They're like, just silence."
Yeah, yeah. So that's exactly it. You want to make sure you're actually doing natural spend. So a couple of things,
Yeah.
look for the big ones right away. Home insurance, car insurance, down payment for a car. Not that you buy a car every year, but the point is whenever you're
Yeah.
about to spend a lot of money, think it's
Yeah.
like, can I maybe sign up for a credit card just to take advantage of this so I can reach that minimum spend? Again, a lot of people don't like to apply for credit cards, and I certainly respect that and I have no problem with that. For people who are comfortable with it, it's an opportunity for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another big worry for Canadians with signing up for credit cards is obviously we talked about how you can spend more. There's no doubt about that, but
Yeah.
also how it affects your credit score.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. Every single time you apply for a new credit card, your credit score takes a hit of 10 points. But if you pay it off within a few months, it goes back up to where it was. So what I'm getting at is applying for a new credit card once every 2 months, once every 3 months is perfectly fine. Not that you would necessarily do that, but some people are more aggressive than others. So, if you want to get into this game, sure, you can do it, but I wouldn't recommend applying for 5 credit cards and then trying to get a mortgage shortly after, because that could affect how home lenders view your credit history, because they want to be like, why are you getting so much credit? Right?
Yeah.
But if you're responsible with your spending, always paying your bills off on time, in full, there's nothing wrong with it. So that's the first part, right? Like just understanding the sign-up bonuses. I write about this on my website all the time.
Yeah, I know you got some great stuff on there.
But it's not as simple as just signing up for a big bonus. It's also understanding how the different credit cards, what benefits you get. So if you're signing up for a credit card, maybe it comes with lounge access, maybe it comes with mobile device insurance. But something as obvious as this: if you don't travel, why are you using a travel rewards credit card? Right?
Yes,
so you
that's
don't
true.
like it's like, say you don't like taking planes, or you don't like flights. Why are you just use a cashback card? Right? Like it makes no sense. But also a lot of the different credit card programs have travel partners, and that's where you really start to maximize your points. So American Express, you can transfer your points to Marriott Rewards. You can transfer your points to Aeroplan. But at the same time, you also really need to understand the value of things. So yeah, you could transfer your points to Aeroplan. So here's a good example. The American Express Gold Rewards card comes with a sign-up bonus of 25,000 points. Now, if you were to use it at the base value, it's worth at least $250, right? But American Express also has a fixed travel system, points reward system. So you can actually get more value for those points. Alternatively, you could also transfer those points to, say, Aeroplan at a 1-to-1 ratio. Again, so that means you now have 25,000 Aeroplan points. Well, a lot of people don't realize with 25,000 Aeroplan points, it's enough points for a round trip ticket to anywhere in the continental US and Canada.
Really?
That's right.
I'm doing it wrong. Well, that's the thing. I feel like that's a lot of math you have to do, but maybe once you kind of are familiar with it, it's not that hard to figure out.
That's exactly it. You nailed it. Like once you actually know what the actual value is and what you can do with those points, that's where you really start to see the value of it. And then more importantly, I talked about how you could transfer your points. That's where you start signing up for multiple cards to get those points. You can quickly accumulate 100,000 points, no problem. So yeah, it requires a little bit of math, but it's just, to me, it's kind of a system where you kind of just need to know what's going on.
How do you know what's going on? Like, how do you stay on top of all this stuff besides reading your wonderful blog?
Well, to me, I think a lot of people need to ask themselves, what are their standard travel habits? So one good example is this. I know you're from Vancouver, right? And every single time you have the option to fly home, do you have a preference of an airline? Do you choose Air Canada or WestJet or vice versa, or do you just go for what's cheapest?
Whatever's cheapest. But we do, talking about credit cards, we have, me and my husband, the RBC WestJet, I forgot what type of card.
Yeah, the WestJet RBC World Elite MasterCard.
Yeah, that's the one. And we got that specifically because we fly home to Vancouver at least once a year for Christmas. And so it allows us to have that $99 companion flight that saves us so much money every year. So
see, you got it.
We have the one credit card that we have that pays for itself 10 times over, and it's perfect. But outside of that, we don't really I think, optimize lots of our points. But in terms of like flights to kind of anywhere or whatever, usually we just look at some comparisons. I find what I like. I don't actually care what airline it is, whatever's cheap it is.
But that being said, right away you recognize, hey, I fly WestJet on a regular basis. This companion voucher alone makes it worthwhile for signing up for the card, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people also forget it. It's like, hey, you know what? It also comes with your first bag checked. So for you and your husband, each time you're flying, that's $120 you guys are saving.
Is that how much it costs to check a bag? Oh my gosh.
$30 each way, right?
Dang.
Canadian per person. So one return flight, that's $120, right? So that one flight, and the card does come with an annual fee of $119. So again, one flight, you've made your money back. So those one way you could kind of look at it. It's like, hey, where am I traveling on a regular basis? Or think about like a business traveler or someone who travels for work on a regular basis. If you were to sign up for Marriott Rewards and you booked all your hotels at Marriott, you would just quickly accumulate points and elite status. So in a sense, you should be loyal to a certain extent. The lowest price obviously is attractive for a lot of people, but sometimes being loyal, because you get the additional perks, free Wi-Fi, sometimes you get a free breakfast or whatever, it can be worth your trouble. But sometimes you also got the annoying part is, and I admit this is annoying, is you need to understand the programs too. So every single bank has their own credit card loyalty program, but you need to understand, how can you redeem your points? Is it easy to redeem your points? Can you use it for taxes?
Yeah.
But to me, that's no different from any loyalty program. We could be talking about PC Optimum. Like I happen to shop at a lot of Loblaw's own stores, so obviously I have a PC Optimum account. I used a credit card because it maximizes points. So to me, it's always like, look at where you're spending, where you're using you're doing the most spending. Can you maximize do they have a loyalty program?
Yeah.
And if they do, can you use a credit card to earn even more points? And quite often the answer is yes. So then you kind of start planning your spending around it. So you don't need to go into too hard details. Like, we're talking about some pretty hardcore stuff. But even like the casual traveler, there's a couple of good all-in-one travel credit cards. The Scotiabank Passport Visa Infinite is a nice card. It gives you
It's another card I have. Yeah. And honestly, I'll be honest, like the points and that's all nice, and there's lots of great perks. Like I do like that I get like 6 passes to the airport lounge. But the main reason I got that one was it was like one of the few credit cards out there that doesn't charge you a foreign exchange fee, and I use it for my business, and most of my business expenses are charged to me in USD. Yeah,
when you look at it that way, like I can take advantage of this, right? It's like you don't necessarily need to really know the ins and outs, but at the same time, you should really understand how loyalty programs work. Even if it's something as simple as, say, like, the Gap has Gap dollars, but they're very specific of how, when you use it. And like my wife quickly realized, it's like, hey, wait a minute, these Gap dollars, I can't use them all the time.
Yeah.
But if I just wait for a sale, it's actually cheaper. So it's like, do you know what I mean? Like it's kind of bizarre sometimes. But or even going back to PC Optimum, sometimes they'll say, hey, if you spend $40 this day, we'll give you 7,500 points. Well, when you do the math, that's like a 20% return. So it's in your best interest to spend more. Like they're obviously doing it for a reason, trying to get you to spend things. But so you never want to buy things that you weren't planning to spend. But if you can kind of plan around it, it's a good thing, right?
I know. Oh, that just reminds me. The other day I was at the Bay to return some stuff, and I was at the cashier, and there's a girl in front of me, and she had like a dress that she was going to buy. And of course, at the Bay, they're always going to try to sell you on this credit card. And what really irritates me is just how they kind of say it. It sounds like, because apparently what I learned is they have their Bay credit card, but they also have this Bay points card that is free, and it is not a credit card. They never really talk about that. They really only focus on the credit card. So this girl was in front of me. Cashier was like, hey, do you want to save 15% on your thing by getting this Bay card? Like, she was kind of a bit vague by it. And so I'm like, me being this personal finance nerd, I'm just like, I'm sorry, is that a credit card you're talking about? Because I just wanted the girl to understand what was going on right now. Because I'm like, do you know that she's trying to sign you up for a credit card? And she's like, oh no, I meant the points card. I'm like, oh, okay, great, that's fine. But then I saw the girl like sign up for the credit card. Maybe she was aware that she was signing up for a credit card, but and then the girl's like, so this means I save 15% like on all my purchases? And the lady's like, no, just on purchases that you do today. And I'm like, that is not a very good incentive? What if you're just going to buy like a few other things? Now you have this Bay credit card. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's funny that you say that, because there are sometimes like you can take advantage of it. If you're like, spending $2,000 to get 15% off is maybe worth your trouble, right?
For me, I'm like 15% is not that good of a deal, but
it just depends how much you're spending, right? But you hit a very good point in the sense that a lot of these salespeople, they're not always telling you the full truth. And I don't know if it's just a lack of training or if they're under constant pressure to, promote credit cards. Because it's the same thing. We talked about PC Financial for a little while. Not that they were caught, and it wasn't necessarily their fault, but a couple of their employees who were pushing the credit cards were like, hey, you get extra points. And they weren't telling people that it was a credit card. And this happens at many retailers. Like, the same thing happened at Canadian Tire. There's always things going on. And I don't know if it's, like I said, the pressure of being in sales, they have to sell X amount or whatever, or they're just not trained properly. But this is why, to me, you always really need to know these things. And, in my writing, I talk about how you always got to read the fine print. You got to read your insurance policies.
Exactly. And usually you don't have enough time when you're at the teller and they're trying to sell you. Like, in my opinion, it's like if you're, buying something and then someone's trying to sell you a credit card to save you money in that moment, I'd say, oh, not this time. I'll think about it. And then go home and do your research, because you're not staying there for like 20 minutes to read the pamphlet and the fine print. And guaranteed that girl did not. But I'm like, you know what? It's not my place to be like, do you know what you're doing? I'm like, that's annoying. So I'm not going to do that. She can make her own mistake.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also the weird thing about like, working this personal finance space. You kind of want to correct people and you want to inform them, but at the same time, it's like, it's not really my place. Like I was at a meeting yesterday downtown, and the table beside me, these two guys were talking about investments. And one guy was clearly an investment advisor. And his client was worried about the dips recently. Yeah. And you probably already know where the story is going. And you're like, that's why you got someone like me who can manage your money and knows what's going on. And it's like, you don't know what you're going on. You just got them in mutual funds.
Yeah. Right? It's like, no, like so many things wrong with that. But that is 100% how they get you. When something goes, there's a market correction or crash or something like that, people panic. And then the investment advisors, air quotes, will say, well, that's why you have me. It's like, they can't protect your investments. They're trying to do the best they can, but they can't guarantee you anything. They can't guarantee you returns.
No one can. If they could, they wouldn't be like, managing your money. I mean...
Guaranteed they're using a robo-advisor for their own money. You know what I mean? Like, it just drives me crazy.
One thing to go back on, like that we didn't really discuss about credit cards and travel credit cards, and people really got to understand, is a lot of people get turned off by the annual fee. And I 100%.
That's I was going to bring that up, because I used to be throughout all my 20s, I wasn't like rich, understatement. And so I couldn't understand why anyone would get a credit card with an annual fee. Because I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't want to pay to use a credit card. Those credit card companies are making money off their clients without that annual fee. Hell no, I'm not.
Yeah. So a lot of people say that. So we use your Scotiabank card as a good example. It's got a fee of $139, right? So we will ignore the sign-up bonus for now, right? Let's just ignore it as it is. Well, if you look at just lounge access memberships, right? They're worth about $350 Canadian, right? Because it's a $99 US fee for the membership, and then each lounge access is $27 US, right? But what you're also getting is the tangible ones, that you get a comprehensive travel insurance package. So that is probably worth a minimum of $120 a year also. So you're basically paying for these benefits, and people don't realize like this is actually going to save you money in the long run. Because if you're traveling without travel insurance, you're crazy, right? Like you should not travel without travel insurance. So the fact that your credit card already gives it to you, perfect, great. Like there, that's what my annual fee is for. So people who get obsessed with not paying an annual fee, it's like, it is what it is. And again, I think you understand as a personal finance blogger.
Yeah, when you look at the fine print and the benefits, like actually doing an analysis of like, how much would this cost if I were to buy it myself? I think that's smart. And also recognizing, would you actually use that benefit? Because there's a lot of credit cards out there that have lots of great benefits. I'm like, I would never use that. So it's not of value to me. So making sure that I would, like for the lounge access, I was surprised that I did actually really like that benefit because I never.
Yeah, once you get it, you're like, I don't want to sit with the cat on the common area ever again. It sounds awful, but it's 100% true. Like, I hate sitting in regular areas.
When you go in there, depending on like what time of day, it's like you can basically get a free meal.
Yeah, and they have
right? Like
unlimited
for
alcohol.
breakfast.
I don't even drink, but the point is, like, you think about how much. Like, I bought a Coke at the New York airport, and it cost me $4 US. I was like, are you kidding me? Right? And I know it's obviously not as expensive as $27 US, but the free lounge access does make a difference. But what I tell people is like, you're getting value, right? Think about all your regular day services. Like how much do you pay for your cell phone plan? Some people pay $90, $100 for a cell phone plan. They say, hey, that's what they get, and they get X amount of data or whatever, and they're happy with it. Well, your credit card is the same thing, but for whatever reason, people they see that fee and they get turned off. And if you don't want to pay a fee, that's fine. And most of the credit cards with fees have a higher income requirement anyways. There are a lot of good no fee cards too out there. You know what I mean? So,
what are some of the best ones you know of?
There's a few good no fee cards. It just depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a straight cash back card, American Express has one. There's a Simply Cash one. The Rogers has one. Even Tangerine's money back card is pretty good for what it is, right? But people got to realize if you're not paying a fee, you're just not getting as many benefits. It's that simple. Yet a lot of people out there know. I don't want to pay for it. Or even like, again, we joked about the lounge access. Like before, people would never care about it. But once you've actually gone into a lounge, and don't get me wrong, it's not like some kind of magical experience, but
some lounges are downright dodgy.
Yeah, it's true. But like I've been to some lounges. Like I remember once in Portugal, I was ready to miss my flight. I just didn't want to leave the lounge. It was so comfortable, right? Yeah, it's like, but do you know what I mean? It's like, look, I like being comfortable before a flight. Like I travel more than an average person, I think. So these things spoil me. And then when I get to an airport that doesn't have a lounge, I'm actually upset. Right? It's silly, but I get mad. I'm just like, come on, you guys are. What is this? And it's ridiculous for me to expect that, but I do.
But yeah. Once you get used to it, it's hard to go back. No, I hear you. I want to talk because I've mentioned that you travel a lot. And so obviously, as you know a ton about credit cards, you know just as much about travel and how to basically have a great experience for not a lot of money. What are some just easy things that people can think about or try out to kind of lower their costs when it comes to travel? Obviously, it's, comes down to organization and preparation and
right. So some
advance.
Easy things right away, I would say it's like, travel during the off season. If you don't have kids, avoid July, August right away. Right. September, October will obviously be cheaper. Same with the spring. April, May, great times to travel. Right. That'll save you a few $100s right away, not just on flights, but also on hotels. Speaking about accommodations, it's pretty easy to compare different hotel sites. One website I like is booking.com, just because you can literally compare tree houses to apartments to hotels, right?
Neat.
And so it's just basically whatever gives you the most options is always good. And if you think about it, everyone knows New York. Staying in Manhattan is obviously expensive. So if you're willing to travel outside, maybe Upper East Side, maybe not there. That's actually a really fancy area, but maybe say Brooklyn, right?
Yeah,
it'd probably be cheaper. Or even somewhere in London, England, it goes by zones. If you're in zone 1 or 2, all the hotels are always going to be expensive. So if you stay in zones 3 or 4, they tend to be cheaper. Yes, you need to spend a little bit of time traveling to get into the core, but it's not a big deal. And it's funny. It's like one of those things, again, most people, they're like, oh, I don't want to waste time taking transit. Although I want to be able to walk everywhere. And I get that, but I'm not telling you to stay 45 minutes or an hour outside of the city. Right. If it's like a 15-minute train ride into the city, that's not a very long time. And if it can save you a significant amount of money, it's worth it. And to me, it's not about trying to save as much money as possible. It's like that money you save can be used for other things on your trip. Maybe,
exactly.
Maybe seeing that attraction, maybe seeing a show, right? Or having a nice meal.
Yep.
And other simple things like, always check to see if there's some kind of museum pass or like a city pass where you can buy. And even if they do have one, you got to do the math. Like, okay, if it's 40% off, how many of these attractions am I actually going to do? Is going to be worth my while, right? And if it adds up, then you just do it. Or something simple. We talked about public transportation. Like, Uber is cheaper than taxis, but public transportation will always be the cheapest option, right? If you're traveling with a family of 4 or 5, yeah, it might make more sense to take an Uber, but public transportation, people get a lot afraid to use it because they're in a different country. But
Mhm.
you know what? I've been around in almost every single country I've been in. You're basically going in the direction of the last stop. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't matter where you are. Look for the last, like the train will say the last stop is going to, and if you're going that direction, you're pretty good. And it doesn't take
Yeah.
very long to figure out, like, oops, I've got on the wrong train. And to backtrack is not a
Yeah.
big deal. Like you'll know right away,
No.
right?
Yeah, and there's always a map. And I mean, we took the subway around Bangkok in Thailand, and let me tell you, like, we do not speak Thai, but we figured it out. And it wasn't like a very straightforward system, but it was fine. And it's part of the for me at least, going on public transit and kind of like trying to be like a local is part of the travel experience. You want to see, like, I actually was so excited to go on like the subway in New York City because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've seen this in movies. I want to see it how it is in real life. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So,
kind of
what
fun.
else I could say? It's like, also think about the destination. Obviously, there's so many cheaper destinations out there if you want to go to. Um, you talk about Bangkok and Thailand, that you've been there. Yes, it's expensive to
Hmm.
get there, but you could easily spend
Yeah.
less than $40 a day all in if you want it, right?
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
cheap once
Like
you're
I
there.
spent more on
Yeah.
lunch when I was in New York a few weeks ago, right? You know what I mean?
What do you think about, because now we're in winter time? What do you think about, because I feel like every travel site is pushing like, go to someplace hot for the winter. Is this the time to go, or is this like actually not the good time to go? Like this is an off season.
Yeah, for winter destinations, this is actually the peak season for a lot of them, right? But like you're talking about like February, March, April. But if you were to able to travel in like say December and January, uh, that's still technically considered the low season for a lot of these hotter destinations. I was in Bermuda in December, and it was their low season, so there were less people. The prices were a little bit lower, and it may not be as warm, but it's still like warmer than home, warmer than Canada is what I'm getting at, right? Okay, oh my gosh, like Bermuda was only 15 degrees, right? Like what am I complaining about? Right? Like it makes no sense. And so you always got to look at the time of where you're going. And you think about it like sometimes going to South America, there's obviously different seasons. It's worth investigating what's going on, but you also kind of need to look at what's going on locally, right? Is there a big festival or celebration going on that time? So even though it might be technically low season in North America, that specific destination you're going to, it might be their peak season. You're like, oh, right? Um, that and other things too. You can easily save on like food. You don't need to eat out every single meal. Like first thing I do when I go to any country is like I find the closest grocery store and I load up on drinks and snacks. Like just water alone, you know how much money you can save instead of buying like that €1 bottle of water every single time. You could easily save like $100 over the course of the trip just by going to the grocery store, like minimum right away. And again, like I said, that money I save, I spend it on something else instead.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's exactly what I do. I tend to try to always find if there's a way that I can save on my flight, and especially accommodation too, because I feel like as I get older, obviously I do like a nicer place, but I also try to remind myself that if I'm traveling somewhere, I'm probably not hanging out in my hotel or my Airbnb. Like I'm just not. I'm out and about. So who
Even
cares
though
if
I'm not hanging out at the hotels, I still like a little bit nicer place. And sometimes you just kind of look at your budget. So my wife and I, we have like an overall travel budget. Every single month, we put in X amount of dollars, and it grows. And the way we look at it is, as long as we've got money in the account, we don't care, right? So if we want to spend a little bit more on accommodations, that's fine. I'm not one of like I'm in my mid 30s. I'm closer to 40 than I am to 30. There's just no way I'm staying in a hostel. Yes, it's the cheapest option possible. And yes, I did in the past, but I'm just not doing it. I don't care if it's cheaper than Airbnb, right? Like I've stayed in tons of hostels, but I can afford to stay in a nicer place. I can afford to have my own room. So it's just like, yeah, you want me like it's one of those things, especially in the personal finance world. Like sometimes you get judged or whatever, but like why am I staying in a hostel when I'm pushing 40? It makes no sense, right? Right? There's so many other options out there.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it's like if you can afford it and you're like actively saving for this travel budget, like why, like there's no point in my mind, like this kind of comes down to like, some of the things that irritate me about the personal finance world is like no point in being frugal for no specific purpose. It makes sense if you want to be able to afford like this, finally go to this one excursion or something like that. But if you're just trying to make it the cheapest trip possible just because, well, believe me, I've done that before. And you come home and you're like, oh, it would have been nice if we actually spent the extra like $300 and went on this extra excursion. That would have been amazing. Because I'll tell you, like, the first real kind of trip me and Josh did, which was like maybe 7 or 8 years ago now. We went to Mexico and we got a deal at this resort. I think we were there for 7 days, and we kind of spent most of our money like on the actual like flight and accommodation, like all that stuff. I'm like, oh, we'll probably just hang out in the hotel and just like relax. After a few days, you're gonna go crazy and get bored, and you're gonna want to go on an excursion. So we did spend a little bit of money going on one, and so that was good. But like then we went back to Mexico last winter and we did 3 excursions. Again, we found a deal. We talked to the consultant and she had a deal, like a package deal of like, if you do 3, you get a certain discount. I'm like, all right. And I'm really glad that we did do that. Again, we did have a travel budget. We had money saved throughout the year to afford that. But for me, it's like, I will always kind of, I'll be frugal in other ways so I can afford those experiences, because that's why you're on the trip.
Yeah, it's a great point because I had a similar experience when I was younger, and mind you, this is my early 20s. I did this trip to Europe, and I did it with my cousin who lived in England, and the goal was to do it as cheap as possible. And I don't recall why. Maybe it's just naturally frugal, but like we went to Barcelona, and yeah, we went to the grocery stores, but we basically went to the grocery store for just about every single meal. So we didn't have tapas, and in hindsight, I regretted that so much because it's like, why would I go to Spain and just not have a nice meal? Like, yeah, I'm in my early 20s, but like I could have splurged on one meal. It wouldn't have been a big deal. Right?
Yeah, like that's part of the experience of travel is eating the local cuisine.
100%. And that was a huge mistake I made back in the day. It's like, how difficult would it have been for me to find, to save $50 anywhere else that entire year? Like ignore that trip for a second, but like back home, it's like I tell people, it's like, don't cheap out on the food when you're traveling. Cheap out on food when you're home. Like, don't go to the restaurants at home. You can do that whenever you want. It's just like when you're on vacation. Like, I actually don't care if you eat out every single meal. Yeah, it'll cost you more. But if you tell me, hey, you know what, I didn't eat out for a month at home, so I can spend all my money on my trip. I'm like, hey man, that's impressive, right?
That makes sense. Yeah. So what are, besides, I guess, well, you mentioned that you and your wife contribute, to kind of a travel fund every single month. How did you figure out what kind of percentage of your budget or how much to contribute? Like, how do you kind of determine that? Do you know what kind of trip you're going to go on that year? Or do you just have kind of this is the amount and then we'll figure out the trip later?
For us, it was kind of like, we always felt like travel was important to us. So we had the set amount. And admittedly, I'm not a big fan of lifestyle inflation, but I do admit that as we made more money, we increased our travel fund a little bit more, just because we like to travel. Like I said, we don't spend more on anything else really, with the exception of our daughter now. But the travel was a little bit. So we just have a generic amount that we are comfortable with. But we came to that amount after we realized, like, okay, you know what? We're saving mortgage, savings, everything else. Are we still good for the travel fund? Yes. But don't get me wrong. Like, let's just say some crazy expense came up that we didn't account for. We would cut the travel fund right away, right? Like when my daughter was born, we were like, okay, we'll probably have to cut the travel fund. But things worked out in a sense where it worked out. But for the first year when my wife was off, we didn't really add to it, if you know what I mean. We just left it where it was.
Yeah.
And once she went back to work, then we're like, okay, we're back on track. So to me, like the big, and I don't really like to judge people, but when I used to work in news, we do these interviews and people, and I'm sure you know this also, is like, they'll be like, oh, I had this great experience. I'm not worried about saving money. I'll worry about that when I'm 40. I'm like, oh, so you're going to be a 40-year-old with no savings, but you've got these great life experiences. It's like, yeah, that's cool, but yeah, good luck, right? Like, I don't want to judge, but it's just more difficult to save for your retirement when you're 40, right?
And I don't understand why people think it's like a either or situation. It's like, I think people sometimes think of personal finance in extremes. Like you either have to be extremely frugal in your 20s and then not have any fun or, in going through your 30s and then, whatever. Or it's like, then I have to buckle down in my 40s. It's like, it doesn't actually have to be extreme. Actually, if you start just being more responsible with your money as early as possible, you will never have to live an extreme. And I personally can't stand extremes because when I looked back in my early 20s, I was pretty extreme with my budget and being frugal because I thought that's what, I mean, honestly, I got very influenced by the books or TV shows I was reading that seemed like that's what you had to do in order to be responsible with your money. As I'm older now and have more knowledge, that's not sustainable. You need more balance in your life. And so you need to basically not wait until you're older to figure things out, because guarantee if you're not doing any of the work in your 20s or 30s, it's gonna be damn hard in your 40s to try to get on track. Also, you're very close to retirement, so yeah.
It's
Yeah, I hear you.
yeah. So yeah, I always recommend people have a travel fund, but it's also you can work backwards, right? Like let's just say you're planning a trip in 1 year and it's going to cost you $2,400. Well, simple math says you just need to save $200 a month. Like obviously expenses come up. Your flight might be the majority of the cost. But the idea is if I set aside $200 a month, I'm going to reach my goal, right? Like it's that simple. So that's why, we were talking about earlier about how you got to research and ways to save money. I always tell people you should always be researching destinations, right? And so you have a rough idea of cost. And you should always be researching multiple destinations. Before we started the podcast, you were telling me about your husband, how you guys are planning to go somewhere this year and you had talked about somewhere else. And he was like, oh no, is that what we want to do? Well, at the same time, you can still research both costs and you'd be like, okay, this is going to cost and this is going to cost. And sometimes something happens, right? Like maybe all of a sudden you find a cheap flight to another destination. You'd be like, oh wait, all of a sudden it's actually cheaper than we thought because we already know all the additional costs. Maybe it makes sense to change our itinerary. A good example of this is a couple of years ago, my wife and I, we had originally planned to go to Europe. We're going to go to I think it was Vienna, Prague, and Budapest at the time. And I had it all priced up. And I'm not even kidding you. We're 95% confirmed. We just had to book it. And then all of a sudden, the prices to the Middle East fell dramatically. And the reason they fell was because it was the Middle East crisis, right? But as someone who works in news and I read about travel a lot, I knew Egypt had just elected a new president. Things were stable. It actually was just fine, but just the perception of the country was not safe, but that wasn't true. So it was a really good opportunity for us to go. And I told my wife, listen, we had already kind of thought about going to Egypt to see the pyramids in the past. And then I go to my wife, I was like, it's cheaper than it's ever been. It's safe. If you're worried, we can join a tour for part of it. So we have a guide the entire time. And she's like, let's do it. And it ended up being one of the best trips we've ever taken in our lives. We met a great couple there we're still friends with. So sometimes you kind of need to look at multiple places just to know and know your options more than anything else. And this applies to anything in life, right? If you know your options, then you just kind of pick the one that makes the most sense for you at that moment.
Totally. And yeah, like you said, so yeah, I was telling Barry that me and Josh were planning on going to Italy. It's on my bucket list. We'll eventually go there, but an opportunity came that a friend wanted to do a house swap. She was going to stay at my place in Toronto. We were going to stay at her condo in Hawaii. And I'm like, we can't pass this up. This is an opportunity that did we, want to go to, it's like Hawaii is on my bucket list. I've heard great, amazing things, but it's it wasn't a go-to destination. I'm like, oh, we'll get there eventually. But I'm like, well, we can't say no for a free accommodation in Hawaii. Right now, flights are super cheap there, surprisingly. And it's just why not? And then when we did, like you said, we calculated what the difference is between having a 1 or 2 week stay in Hawaii compared to going to Italy. Oh my gosh, Italy is so freaking expensive. I think this is probably what we're gonna do.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is, right? I think each other big points the house swap opportunity. It's just okay, this is a rare opportunity. It really is. Do we take advantage of it? And you should, in my opinion. There's always places you regret. It's you're smart enough where it's not necessarily about the money. Another good example is when I was younger, when I was just out of college, one of my best friends, she worked on cruise ships all over the world. Right? She did it for about 4 or 5 years. And at the time, she always said, hey, Barry, come visit me. You pay for the flight, and it's only $12 a day to be on this cruise, right? Technically, there was no guarantee that I would get a seat, but you always did, right?
Yeah.
But I was always like, I don't know if I should leave work. That's a kind of old school mentality. I can't, as part-time, I can't just leave. And, what will my bosses think? Like, maybe they won't give me the hours when I come back. And to this day, it's still the biggest regret I made, because I never ended up taking advantage of that opportunity. And she did it for 5 years. And then I said no, because I was just like, I don't want to spend the money. And it would have cost me nothing, right? Yeah, the flight would have been quote unquote expensive in my 20s, but it would have been a great experience. And I still talk to her about it all the time. It's like, man, I wish I hung out with you when you were still cruising, right?
I know.
So that's why I was like, sometimes you got to just jump on these opportunities. Like, if it's not going to destroy your budget and put you into debt, just do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, first, so it sounds like, to kind of recap some of the things we talked about, really focus on the destination, but also research multiple destinations to see which one makes the most sense. And then have a travel fund. So when an opportunity does come up or a good deal comes up, you have the cash to pay for it. Because, I always, pay for flights and accommodation on my credit card, but I have the cash to pay it off right away. And then, make sure that you spend the money where it makes the most sense for you on your trip. And don't to feel bad about splurging. That's why you've got the travel fund, so you can afford it. You just, and then cut back in your daily life. That's it. I really like how you mentioned that. It's like, wouldn't you rather cut back when you get back home and just like do a no spend month instead of cut back on this trip that you saved all year for? Come on.
Yeah. That's kind of the way you look at it. Like, that's why back home, I'm just like, I don't need that. I'd rather spend it somewhere else. And it's actually a really good feeling, because when I do travel with my wife knows I'm a frugal person, right? But she also knows when I travel, I don't care, right? Because I'm like, the whole point of having this, travel vacation fund and saving at home is so we can really spend the money on things we enjoy. So we don't hesitate. Or even like the weird thing is, like, hopefully my wife doesn't listen to this, because, like, I criticized her for shopping. I was like, do you really need that extra pair of pants? Her joke is like, oh, I need it for work, right? It's like, when she's on vacation, I actually do not care how much money she spends on shopping, because, again, it's like, no, we've come here for a reason. If you want to buy whatever here, go for it. Like, it actually does not bother me whatsoever. And it's kind of weird even when I say it out loud, because, like, normally I'm like, do you need that? But again, on vacation, it's like, whatever, just go. Like, have your third coffee, or get the massage, even though it's like twice the price, because we're at the hotel spa. But it's like, go for it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thanks so much, Barry, for joining me on the show. I feel like I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I won't do that to people. I feel like on your website, don't you have a travel opt-in or travel resource?
Yeah, so I have a newsletter, or if you sign up for a newsletter, I have like an ebook on how to save on travel. But even like travel and credit cards are subsections on my website, moneyrehab.com. So it's actually really easy to do research if you want to learn about credit cards. I got a lot of resources, including like, the best travel credit cards, best credit cards with no foreign exchange fees.
Yeah, you're always on top of all like the new changes to any kind of credit card. So it's like, if you want to do some research, you've got, even when I start Googling, your stuff comes up. So good resources, your Money We Have website. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Barry, for joining me on the show. I'll have you back again in another couple of years.
Fantastic. If we're still doing this, hopefully we are.
If we're still, oh my gosh, who knows? Who knows where we're going to be? And that was episode 189 of the Mo Money Podcast with Barry Choi. Make sure to check his website out at moneyrehab.com. Basically, such a great resource if you're, because he's not only a money expert, he's also a travel expert. And so he knows all the things when it comes to like optimizing travel points and credit cards and all that stuff that I wish I was better at personally, but I just don't have the knack like Barry does. So moneyrehab.com is his website, so you can go check him out. And also check out the show notes, jessicamorehouse.com/189. I'm going to be putting more information about stuff that we talked about in this episode in the show notes, plus including a lot of important, exciting things that I'm up to that you will want to know about, that I will share with you in 2 seconds right after I share some words about this episode's sponsor. This episode of the Mo Money Podcast is supported by Sonnet Insurance. It can be pretty time-consuming collecting insurance quotes to compare prices. What's great about Sonnet is that you can do it entirely online and get a quote in just minutes. Even better, if you decide to buy Sonnet Insurance, you can do that online too. It's so easy to use and understand, it really makes insurance simple. You can even see your quote update in real time if you add additional coverage or change your deductible. so you can confidently know what's in your policy and how the cost compares to competitors. Need to see it to believe it? Try it out yourself by visiting sonnet.ca. Once again, that's sonnet.ca. All right, first and foremost, super importante, which is the extent of my Spanish. I don't even know if that's Spanish. Super important. Tonight, March 20th, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm doing a free live webinar all about investing. If you want to get your investing on, if you want to be motivated and, have some action items and just like get started with investing because you've been meaning to, but you're too afraid and you're too terrified, you don't know where to start, this is where to start. I'm telling you right now, it's a free webinar. All you have to do is literally show up, listen to me talk, and you can ask any questions you want at the end. So this is destiny. This is destiny talking to you through me. Okay, maybe that's a bit much. But anyways, if you want to join me, go to the show notes or go to jessicamorehouse.com/webinar to sign up. It is tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You will not want to miss it. And I hope to see you there. It'll be a ton of fun and you'll learn a bunch of stuff. So, why not? Another thing. So last week on the podcast, I had Leslie Ann Scorgi on the show, and I'm adding one of her books to my mega book giveaway. If you go to jessicamorehouse.com/contest or check out the show notes, of course, I'm doing a big, huge book giveaway of the books by the authors I've had in my show. I don't know why that was so hard to say, but it was. It made more sense in my brain and it was hard to get out. So I'm giving away copies of Melissa Leong's new book, How We Go Money, Shannon Lee Simmons' Living Debt Free, Tanya Hester's Work Optional, Nathan Lotka's How to Be a Capitalist Without Any Capital, and I'm now also including giving away a copy of Leslie Ann Scorgi's book, The Modern Couple's Money Guide. So I think this is a very great book if you want to learn how to manage money as a couple, which is a very common question I get. It is kind of a different ballgame when you're managing money on your own to managing it with someone else, because there's another person involved with different money mindsets and habits and all that good stuff. So I'm going to give away a copy of her book. jessicamorehouse.com/contest is where you can learn more information about all of my contests and enter them and hopefully win some free stuff. Don't go away. I'm going to do now some shout outs to a few more iTunes reviews that I got. So stick around in case you may be one of them and hear your name. All right, first is from Courtney from Canada. She is hooked on the Mo Money podcast. She says, I started listening to Jessica Morehouse's podcast a year ago and have been hooked ever since. The topics she covers are very relatable as a millennial, and it's safe to say I've become a personal finance nerd who went from living paycheck to saving, or paycheck to paycheck, to saving, spending, and investing wisely. Keep the episodes coming, Jessica. And then it's like one of those like hands up, yes emojis. Thank you so much, Courtney. That makes me so happy. I'm so glad to hear that you're a money nerd just like me and you're no longer living paycheck to paycheck. That makes me so happy. Okay, next is from Chris Lego from Canada. I was recommended by a friend to start listening to some financial podcasts on my drives to work. And once I found this one, I don't want to stop driving. Oh my God, that is so nice. Jessica has so much information and wants to teach and show everyone the right way to handle their money. It's amazing. 100% suggest listening. Thank you so much, Chris. Next, I've got a review from Youngling Guitar Boy, and boys like BOI because they're cool, from Canada. They say, this podcast is super amazing and informative. I'm super new to investing, but made it my goal this year to become more financially responsible and look forward to my future. The content runs so much in line with my values, and I'm so happy to finally have some info, resources for SRI, and there's like a little heart thing. Thanks for the great work. And SRI is socially responsible investing, in case you don't know. Last, from Vancouver Bomb from Canada. I started listening to Jessica's podcast about 6 months ago. I'll be honest, I didn't expect to enjoy it. I know, I get it. Money, how could that be fun? Oh my gosh, I'm so ridiculous. I figured at my age, almost 50, I should understand money better. So I started trying to educate myself. I have learned so much and I've loved it. I now feel comfortable talking to others about finances and getting my own money life in order. Thank you, Jessica, for making this information accessible and enjoyable to learn. I truly believe it is essential for everyone to understand money and how it works in our lives. I wish I had done this much sooner. Thank you so much, Vancouver mom. Oh my gosh, it'd be so funny if it was my mom. It's not my mom. Thanks so much, everyone, for sharing your reviews and your thoughts and your kind words. I really, really appreciate it. It makes me speaking into this microphone alone and then recording it and then, giving it to you feel like we're all in this together. We're a community. Like we're all, virtually in this cool community. So I don't know. It just makes me, it gives me life. Anyways, so if you want to leave me a review and get a shout out on a future episode, I think that would be dandy. So take 2 seconds. You could do it easily on desktop or on the iTunes app. Then I'll give you a shout out on a future episode. It's easy peasy lemon squeezy. What's not to like? All right. Hopefully I see you at the webinar tonight, jessicamorehouse.com/webinar. If not, I'll see you back here next Wednesday with a fresh new episode of the Mo Money Podcast.